Welcome back. It's just about 6:13. Here in the Treasure Valley, we only get 12 inches of rain a year. Almost everything we grow comes from irrigation taken from rivers and aquifers, but it's a complicated process deciding where it goes after that. A juggling act, really, to make sure we don't end up like our water-starved neighbors. Natalie Hurst explains.
They're an iconic symbol of the West. Our rivers, our water. But how much of this is now threatened?
Oh, it's absolutely, in my opinion, the most critical, or one of the most critical issues that the West is facing.
Gary Spackman is director of Idaho's Department of Water Resources. It's his job to make sure Idaho holds on to its water and divides what's available each year among those who have rights to use it.
For good or for bad, the state of Idaho per capita uses more water than any other state in the nation.
Roughly 80% of Idaho's annual water goes toward irrigation from a myriad of rivers and underground aquifers. But since 1950, southern Idaho's largest aquifer, the Eastern Snake Plain, has been declining every year by 200,000 acre-feet of water. Imagine that same number of football fields flooded 1 foot deep in water. That's why Spackman's board is working with canal companies and irrigation districts to put more than 75,000 acre-feet of water back into the aquifer.
It's a big deal, but we still have some problems with the aquifer. The spring flows are declining, groundwater levels are declining. It's affecting water supplies for senior water right holders there.
In Idaho, the first who diverted water for irrigation and industry own first rights to use water. But enforcing that law has landed Spackman and the board in litigation over senior versus junior water right holders throughout 2 decades.
There are provisions of law that say that I'm not to allow the withdrawals of groundwater to exceed the average annual rate of recharge.
Managing Idaho's water is difficult because the variables are always fluctuating. Take, for example, our rivers. Some flow free, others have dams, like here on the Snake River. In peak summer demand, the Milner Dam upstream is entitled to a zero flow, but here at the Swan Falls Dam, which is home to the Idaho Power Hydroelectric Dam, they have minimum flow standards. And in the middle of spring, we're already in trouble.
And we are now approaching those minimums. We may violate them this summer.
Idaho lawmakers are exploring whether more water storage may be the solution. Governor Butch Otter last year approved $15 million for water projects and studies. That includes developing systems to restore the Eastern Snake Plain aquifer, studying whether Arrow Rock can expand on the Boise River, and seeing if the Weiser River can handle a reservoir. Many states in the West are looking at similar ideas, and Spackman says California in particular could learn from Idaho.
So in contrast, California has a dual system where they regulate their surface water, but there really isn't any regulation of groundwater. And that's one of the problems that they're faced with right now, is that people are just diverting groundwater and those levels are declining without any sort of administration of the water rights.
And of course, there's another way all of us can create water storage. It's away from the rivers and here in the gardens. It's through conservation. And that means plant what's native to Idaho, such as this chokecherry.
Just a matter of putting the right plant in the right place, using long, deep watering techniques rather than the short, shallow waterings.
Elisa Clark, the co-founder of the North End Organic Nursery, says Idaho's native plants have learned to grow without much water. Less frequent waterings, but for longer periods of time, will keep them alive.
Water just saturates everything and soaks down into the ground, which encourages those roots to grow deep down, and they are safe down there.
For Spackman, the juggling between water rights, storage or no storage, is worth its weight in liquid gold. For someday, our neighbors could come knocking.
In the future, there may be those who, from other places, who may want to say, you know, Idaho has water, and we'd like to tap into it somehow.
And his goal is to make sure what flows in Idaho stays in Idaho for generations to come.